Namaste, Barbara. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you virtually and to get to know about your story. I must honestly share that I've known about you for many, many years. And I've known about your daughter and about your family. A trinity of beautiful women that really inspire me so much. And I love following your posts, and I'm a big fan of your family. So it's an absolute pleasure to meet you for the first time virtually and to get to know about your story, which I'm so eager to learn. It's the first time I will get to really experience your life journey, and I'm sure that everyone who will watch this will be so inspired as well, I'm sure. So thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you so much, and it's just wonderful. I've seen your posts now, I guess, several years, and to meet you, well, not actually, but virtually, really talk to you. It's wonderful, and
Oh, thank you.
I'm happy to share my story. So thank you for asking me.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the questions. I have quite a few for you here, so I assume this will be a long interview because there's so many things that I'm curious about, and I'm sure everyone who will listen to this also. So I would love to learn about your life before India and how did you get to India, to Indian culture?
Yes. I was born in Germany, actually. My father's German, but from Chile. Well, he's German, born in Chile, grew up in Chile, uh, came to America, met my mother on the beach here near San Francisco, and but wanted his children to grow up in Germany, so he got a job in Germany. So I was born in Germany and grew up there for the first years of my life. But then we came back to California. So I grew up in California, north of San Francisco. I had no influence of India in my life. I mean, through my family directly, except for my grandmother who had traveled to India in the early 1900s. So
Oh, wow.
I did grow up with a very tattered sari that I used to play with that she had brought back from India. We would play with it in the basement, and
Mhm.
she always talked about the Taj Mahal and how she did love India. She was a world trip that she took around the world. She really loved India. I had that little glimmer there, but otherwise not. And So my life before India was really my childhood because I got introduced to Indian dance as a teenager, and that's primarily because of where I grew up, which is north of San Francisco, where Ali Akbar Khan Sahib, the great Sarod master, and many other artists, because of course this is also the home of the Grateful Dead. Are you familiar with the
Of course.
grew
I'm
up, yeah, hearing the Dead? Um, Influential in my high school,
yeah.
uh, era. But so many artists came to this region because we're 1 hour north of San Francisco. It's very beautiful. There are beautiful mountains and nature, and many artists were here. And Kansab decided to found his school here in I believe 1968. I might not be 100% on that correct on the date, but I think that's right. So I was already interested in music. I had taken ballet for 8 years as a young child, and then I was going in high school, got into African dance and then Middle Eastern dance. Here's my trajectory. So African jazz, then to Middle Eastern, and then I had started going to concerts at Ali Akbar College of Music and
Mhm.
hear all the wonderful artists that they brought. And then one day they brought a dancer. And
That
that
was
was
it.
performance, and that was Chitrish Das, who is no
Yes.
more. He passed away. I think it's been 5 years now. He was a Kathak dancer from Calcutta.
Mhm.
I went. It was 10 minutes from my home. There was a small performance, his first performance, I believe, here,
Oh my
and
goodness. Oh my goodness, you've witnessed the whole journey from the beginning.
In a way, you're right.
Yeah, wow.
By happenstance of birth, the timing, yeah.
That's
Uh,
incredible.
I think when I saw him, to use the terminology from my era, it blew my mind. It was there was no going back. But at the same time, he was a phenomenal dancer, and his technical, not just, obviously not just his technical skills, but his technical skills were very mind blowing. And he was doing his 100 chakras. He could do 100 chakras in a row. That was his big thing, And also he could do the he could mimic the trains in sound of the train in India with his feet, which was so evocative. And I had never heard seen anything like this. I had heard Indian music, and I was already in love with Indian music and yoga. I started
Mhm.
yoga. I went to an alternative high school, and I had Kundalini yoga. So it was around me in the air.
Of course, you were when the sprouting of that cultural hub that is so strong right now in the Bay Area. I mean, when you spoke about him imitating the the sound of the train tracks with his gungurus, it reminded me about the last concert that I saw of Zakir Hussain. He was sharing how they developed sounds, rhythmic patterns in the tabla, and it was about, listening to nature, listening
That,
to cars passing in the road. Like if you were going to pass the road, how would that trajectory be? So, and since Katak follows the tabla, vice versa, I'm not surprised that he would do the same thing with his feet.
yes,
That is amazing.
for that. He was known for his train, his uh, sounds. So that, yeah, after that performance, I literally could not turn back, but I was also daunted by it. I thought, how can I do this?
Mm.
Where do I start? But obviously, I think I actually waited a year because I've always been very attracted to, uh, I was at that time, it was the Back to the Land movement. So I
Mm.
had lived in Canada on a homestead, and I wanted to be a farmer. Um, doesn't really go with dance.
Actually in Orissa, they always told me that it's so good to dance Odissi and work the land because
Really?
because a lot of the dance patterns of Odissi, like walking, were very much inspired by the ladies walking in their house, walking in the farmland. A lot of it is based on tribal culture, so uh, it's so I'm not surprised.
It's very true. You're right. And the gait of elephants,
Totally, yes.
peacocks and deer. And
Yes, yes.
so I actually waited a year to start Indian dance, and I went, that actually, the trajectory of everything is a little foggy now. I different farm. I lived on farms in Canada. I homesteaded, and I lived on a homestead. And then spent a year in Germany. I went back to Germany as a teenager and worked on farms in Germany for a year. And interestingly, when I went there, I was more into Middle Eastern dance, but I had seen the Indian dance, so I had actually brought, who knows why I would bring my Middle Eastern dance costumes to work on farms in Germany, but I had them with me. When I came back, I had my things all shipped back, and my cousin wrote to me and she said, um, Sie sind irgendwie unter den Räder gekommen, means your box has disappeared. It's not coming. It's come under the rails, in fact, or under the wheels. It's disappeared. So all my costumes, all my Middle Eastern costumes, gone. So that was kind of like a natural break. When I came back from that year in Germany, I started with the Indian dance classes, but I started with Kathak because of English. And at that point, I didn't know what is South India, what is North, what is East, are there any, I knew nothing about Indian dance. And and so those classes didn't work out. That's a whole nother story in a way. It's not a long story, but he was teaching through the college and it didn't work out. So I was
Okay.
still looking for a teacher, and I saw an article in the local paper about a young American woman who had just moved to San Rafael. I live one town away, and she was teaching Indian dance, and it was Bharata Natyam, but it was Indian dance.
Yeah, of course. So,
Yeah, and her name was Jill Rosenblum, and she was from New York. And I took my first class in overalls. Do you know what overalls
of
are?
course, I know.
Jeans with the they're farmer clothes. I was in transition. She was very kind. She didn't say anything to me. She let me take the class in my overalls. And I continued with her, and I fell in love with Bharatanatyam, and and studied with her for several years until she moved back to New York. And I wasn't ready to make a big move, to follow her, which
Mhm.
perhaps I could have done at that time. But she introduced me to my future teachers, Katherine and K.P. Kunhiraman.
All right. So I guess at this point you started making plans to go to India.
Well, yes, and yes, I did. Certainly in my mind, I did, but it took me 6 years to get there.
Okay.
um, Financially, 'cause I didn't
Of
have
course.
financial support. And my parents were, my mother always supported me in whatever I wanted to do, but she didn't support me financially. She supported me morally. And my father was strictly opposed to it. Absolutely. In fact,
Wow.
you know, he refused to ever see me dance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was not a path. He did not want his daughter to be an artist by profession.
Hmm.
Um, so there was no support from that side. So I just, gosh, how did
I resonate with that too. My
I'm
dad also is completely against it. So I
yeah,
resonate.
banker, and he was an immigrant to the United States, and he made his own way, and he wanted me to do something practical. He wanted me to be a bank teller.
Make money, big money.
Bless his heart. I mean, he
Yeah.
wanted stable. It wasn't even about big money, but just, have a stable life. And honestly,
Mhm.
he was on one level, he was right because it's been a struggle. It's been a
Yes,
very ongoing, continues to be ongoing financial struggle, really.
I'm aware of that too. So, when did you manage to go to India, and how was the whole preparation for that journey? And where did you go to?
So then I was studying at UCLA in the World Arts and Cultures degree program, and I met my husband. And my
Mm-hmm.
husband was from, I met him at a Krishna temple in LA. He was from UP Walla. We used to joke, we had a intercultural marriage. I was from South India, he was from North India. Didn't have a lot of connection to South India at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I came to India was as a wife and a mother, because by the time, so we got married and I had my daughter Tara.
Mm-hmm.
We went to meet his family. So it was more of a family trip, although of course we went to Chennai and we did meet some dancers. I met Sitara Devi on that trip because my husband had been a journalist and he knew her. So uh, we had a wonderful meeting with her.
Wonderful.
And we went to Chennai, we went to Kalakshetra and visited. But I didn't actually dance a step. I mean, Tara was only a year and a half old.
Oh, yeah. So you were deep in motherhood.
Steeped in motherhood. So it was a family visit. I went to my husband's village. His family came from the village in between Allahabad and Prayag and Benares.
Hmm.
And, it was an all encompassing immersion, deep immersion introduction to India.
I can imagine.
Many hours waiting waiting, sitting, waiting in Mumbai. His family had uh, business in Mumbai, so uh, you know how it is in India.
Of course, you on a family trip, so visiting all the family members.
And 4 hours later, they'll be back and speak Hindi. You know, it was
Hmm.
wonderful, and difficult. And I got very sick. I got dysentery, and Tara got sick. And as I said, it was a total immersion.
Initiation.
Initiation, good word.
That's how I call it. You- a big initiation. So, when were you able to go to India and immerse yourself in dance practice? How did
much,
that come about?
much later. I can't even remember the year. Um, quite a few years later. Meanwhile, I was studying with Katherine and Kunhiraman in Berkeley, which is just across the bridge from me. So I was very involved in, 3 times a week I was studying with them and dancing with their company and,
Oh, so they
creating
were based in the Bay Area.
based in the Bay Area.
Oh,
Yeah,
how wonderful.
they're from Kalakshetra.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful. That's something that I just love about the Bay Area. You have such amazing teachers. It's
yeah.
like the haven of like study, the haven to like whatever you want to study. And with good teachers, you go to the Bay Area because everyone is there.
You've been here?
Yes, I have. I
Oh
have. Yeah, I did live in California for 10 years on and off.
my goodness. Okay,
Yes, yes. So,
you
so,
must.
but yeah, when I was in the Bay Area, I was focused on Persian dance. Yeah,
Oh,
so I study and I performed Persian dance, and I was studying with Miriam Peretz and Bala Afsaneh. So
okay.
I was a lot in Berkeley, and I was deep in Persian world. So when I was in the Bay Area, I wasn't so much doing Indian dance because I was living half the year in India and then half the year in the Bay Area. So when I was in India, I had the full immersion of Indian dance. So at the Bay Area, it was my opportunity for the Persian immersion.
I was in one of the founding people in Balai Afsane. Did you know
Oh,
that?
I had no idea.
I worked
Oh,
years with Charlene, at least, and performed with her.
oh my goodness. I had no idea.
Yeah, that was in fact one of Ballet Afsani's first performances on the grass in Marin County for Nowruz. I way back in 80 something. I don't remember when. Um, I joined it because I'm jumping ahead here, but I joined it because Bharatanatyam, although I was dancing with Katherine and Kunhiraman's Kalanjali company, it's so much of a solo art form, and there's so much pressure as a solo dancer. And I had seen Afsane perform, and I thought that looks like so much fun. It just
I felt the same.
I can join it, and I don't have to be the pressure of being a soloist, and it's beautiful, and I love the music, and so I did it as an adjunct to my Bharatanatyam. I did it simultaneously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I experienced exactly the same thing. When I saw Bala Efsane, I was like, oh my goodness, that is just such a good compliment to the rigorous Odissi training. Just to be
Right.
able to fly across the floor.
So you understand? Yes.
I thoroughly understand. I thoroughly understand.
I did lots of performances with
Oh,
Afsan,
wonderful.
many years with Charlene as the costume assistant and other assistant and driving all over the Bay Area performing and
Wow.
so I was juggling a lot. But so where are we now in the trajectory?
So we are in the trajectory. So you were practicing. You had let's say the foundational practice of Bharatanatyam was happening in the Bay Area with these teachers, and then I was wondering when did you make it to India for a dance immersion, and how was that journey?
Yes. So excuse me. The natural thing or the next progression would be to have, of course, I've would have done under other circumstances my Arangetram earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but that didn't happen in the trajectory of my life. So we I discussed with my teachers, Katherine and Kunhiraman, that I want. Of course, I was trying to get to India, and they suggested, and I love the choreography of C.V. Chandrasekhar. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's one of the master teachers from Kalakshetra.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, he was living in Baroda, and because I had this North Indian connection in my personal life, I thought for my daughter also it'd be good to have exposure to Hindi. He was
Mm-hmm.
teaching at MS University in Baroda. He was the head of the dance department. So I went I went off to Baroda, and at that time with Tara, with my daughter, I wasn't together with my husband at that point, but he was supporting us, and we were really living nicely on $200 a month. Everything, we could get a flat, we could get someone to help us. I could pay my classes, and she was going to school. So he would send me $200 cash a month in a FedEx. It came through DHL or something. That's how I was living.
Wow, incredible. How old was Tara at that time?
She was about 8 or so,
Oh,
seven.
wow.
Seven. Yeah, she was just starting school. Actually, she was in KG, first KG, first year KG, kindergarten.
Wow, wonderful.
So that was my first like full dance immersion, and I spent the year there just before my Arangetram, about 2 months before I got malaria. And it was quite serious, and I was hospitalized, and that was a major challenge.
Of
But
course. What year was this? 90s?
I don't I think it was yeah, it must have been the 90s, early 90s. And
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, I recovered, and luckily, and that everything was so different then. I mean, you couldn't just pick up a cell phone and call somebody. You had to go to the STD station, and then it was like, "Hello, hello, I'm calling. Hello, mama." I call my mother. My
I
parents didn't even know that I was sick. Probably for 2 weeks after I recovered, they didn't know because I was too sick to write to them.
of course.
And it was just a different time. Um, but I did recover, and I did present my Arangetram in the hall of Chandrasekhar's home, which was the home of the British residents. So the British residents in India had very grand palatial homes,
Yes.
like style, Greek
Mm-hmm.
classical style, with pillars and big ballrooms. And
Yes, yes.
that was his dance hall.
Wow.
And as a teacher at MS University, he had been given part of this large home as his residence and his dance hall. So that's where I presented my Arangetram.
Wow, that's beautiful. And how was what challenges did you face being a single mother in India, studying dance, foreign woman, and how did you how like I'd love to know like how people supported you and what were those challenges and how did you prepare yourself to assume that I mean, I can't imagine what it is to be in India in the 90s as a single mother. My goodness, that takes so much courage and I guess just complete devotion to the art.
No, I would say more than courage, it was just blind love for
Love.
it. So passionate about it, and I was going to do anything I could to make it happen. I have to cough, excuse me.
No problem.
I just plunged in, honestly, and maybe it probably I did things that were, uh, in retrospect, it was difficult. So, but I wouldn't change it, and I also wanted Tara to have the experience of India growing up, as a half Indian
Of
child.
course.
And what were the challenges? Wow, well.
Just so many stories.
Yeah, I won't tell too many stories, but um, I lived in a neighborhood that was primarily Parsi, as it turned out, Parsi community, and they were very kind, welcoming people. Um, and yet I did feel alone also. I would say, ironically, that getting malaria was what made me feel I really belonged in the neighborhood
Mm.
because neighbors all, in fact, I didn't even know I had malaria. I knew I was sick, but my neighbor saw me across the street, and it was a very small street, like just a tuk-tuk could get through it, that's
Oh,
all.
okay, one of those. Mhm.
I remember it was Diwali, and the firecrackers were going off, and they were reverberating off the cement
Rooftops on the
building.
floor. Yeah.
Head was splitting, and I just came out to the front door. You know, I was in a state, and my neighbor looked at me. She took one, looked at me, and she put me in an auto rickshaw, took me to the hospital. She knew I was sick,
Something was going on.
and I was so sick that I couldn't even keep track of my daughter. I mean, and the other neighbors took Tara, and they kept her while I was in the hospital. I mean, this won't happen in America.
Wow.
So the neighbors really came to my aid, and when I came home from the hospital, we were more of a community, and
That
so
is
I,
beautiful.
but still more conservative time. So when I would go to my daily class with Chandrasekhar sir, he wouldn't let me wear my dance sari. He wouldn't let me put it on at home and wear it in the auto rickshaw. I had to
Oh,
change. And same thing, I had to change out of my sari when I left his house. So I couldn't, because now you'll see in Chennai and every place, women who are dancing, they're on their mopeds with their dance saris, right?
yeah. Everyone just goes everywhere with their dance. Sorry.
Well, I wasn't allowed to. However, I became very good at putting my dance sari on really fast.
Fast time.
So that was a good initiation. That was just a very small challenge, but the food was a challenge. I don't feel that I had too much judgment from people,
Hmm.
a little bit, but ultimately, when I told people what I was doing and why I was there, people were pretty supportive.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I guess I feel the same. Like my first years in journey to India were like that. At first, people weren't really sure of who I was, and there was always this little, you know, critical eye. But then once people got to know that, oh, I'm actually here for the art and culture, then there is kind of a respect that grows within people's eyes. So I guess we've all experienced that.
And actually, I would say having a child was a huge bond because also she was half Indian, and it was, you know, yes, it was good having a child.
Of course, yes, yes, yes. You remind me so much of, I don't know if you heard about Sharon Lowen.
Oh, well, I know Sharon from way back
Yeah.
because I studied Odissi with her when she was teaching at University of San Diego or San Diego State. I don't remember
Yes,
which.
she was there.
Yeah, she did a summer program, and that's when I fell in love with Odissi. But at that point, there were no Odissi teachers here.
Hmm.
Um, but along the way, continuing the trajectory, when I was back home, did you know Ananda Radha? Did you ever know of Ananda Radha? Ananda Radha,
No.
an American woman who was a disciple of Kelucharan Baba, Guruji, and she came to the Bay Area and started teaching Odissi, and that's when Tara, I think that was before I went for my Arangetram, because I used to bring a bassinet. You know what a bassinet is? A baby.
Yes, yes, carrier.
Um, I used to bring it to the dance studio, and Tara would be there while I was learning Odissi. So my path to Odissi was not regular because there were not regular teachers. But
Teachers
when
around.
yeah, I started studying with her, but then she moved on because it was hard to establish. Hard to establish. That would have been 81. yeah, interestingly, I had met the day after Tara was born, my husband brought Ananda Radha to my house.
Hmm.
He had met her at a concert and the night before, and she came. Tara was born at home. She came to my home the day after Tara was born.
Wow, what a blessing.
Yeah.
What a beautiful blessing. Yeah, so Sharon, I spent some good time with Sharon this year. I live in Goa in India, and so she came and spent 2 weeks with me. So we really had a time to bond. And she also has a daughter named Tara.
And I know Tara. Yes.
Yeah, and she also lived she was in India as a single mother, most of her adult life.
That's true. That's correct. Right.
Yeah, so your story reminds me of that, and I really
So we were
admire you women who do that. It's amazing. I really admire like who stick so true to the art and have children and are so resilient in the path because it's takes really devotion and intelligence.
yeah,
um
I think it's been both a blessing for my daughter and it was difficult for her, although she loved India as a little girl, but she changed schools a lot. In retrospect, as a mother, um, I think it's on the other hand, as she herself said, it her life with me prepared her to be on tour as a touring dance artist with
Dancer. There you
Sophisticated.
go. There you go. Wonderful. All right. So, I would love to know, right now, how did you establish your teaching in America, in California?
Actually, I resisted teaching for a long time because I wanted to be a performer. So I performed. I'm actually not performing anymore. I have a knee injury, but my last performance was about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. But so it was a very gradual process, and also I had to work in a real job simultaneously to being in ballet afsane, doing Bharata Natyam. Then I also added Odissi to it, and I had to, and I ended up getting my MA. Yeah, it's been a crazy life. It's been very
Wow, it's admirable.
Um, so it was very gradual, and I did not set out to be a teacher actually. First of all, I didn't have time.
Of course.
Yeah, slowly, slowly. I actually probably started about 20 years ago. And I never really formally established my school. I mean, now these days I say I started in 1986. I don't really know when I started. I mean, I'm not sure. I didn't, because I didn't set out to have a school.
Mm,
It kind of organically,
happened.
yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is simultaneously it developed organically as the Indian community here grew,
Hmm.
because although Kansab had founded his school, most of his students for many years were Westerners.
Hmm.
And as the Indian population grew in the Bay Area, more people came, but even then most of them were in the South Bay for tech jobs, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
That I would say in the last 10 years that the Indian community in my area, which is Marin County, has established itself. In fact, now they're going to build a temple.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, the community is growing, and at this point, they're like renting a space for a temple. So a temple has been established actually in the last couple years.
That's beautiful.
So
That's
I've got the first children of.
firsthand, firsthand. Oh my God, that is just wonderful. Um, okay, so now I would love to. We shared on the email. You told me about your thesis, and I thought it was just an absolute divine synchronicity that your thesis, that has been your life work, is a something that what this podcast is about also. So, which is really beautiful. So it's and exciting. So I'd love for you to share with us about your thesis, and I really hope the book will come. I mean, just talk about it.
Pulled out my thesis, which I didn't get bound, but I only got it bound this way. It's American Devadasis, Finding and Losing Self Through the Practice and Performance of Classical Indian Dance. Uh, so just a little background, how I came to this. I had gotten my, I bounced around in school also. After Los Angeles, and India, the first India trip, I moved back to the Bay Area and I continued my BA in South Asian Studies at UC Berkeley. So I had my BA from UC Berkeley, and uh, and then of course I was single mother and working, and I I promised myself I wouldn't go back for my MA until Tara had finished her BA.
Okay.
So she completed her BA, and then I felt, okay, I can go back. And I found a program at a point in my life when I was really disillusioned about some things, having some difficulty with things. And it was the Women's Spirituality Program through the Institute of Transpersonal Studies. And this was a women's, my major was women's spirituality. Actually, the way I was drawn to it, now I recall, there was a teacher named Diane Jeanette, and she had done her thesis work in Attakal Pongala. That is the festival in Kerala that happens yearly where I think close to 5 million women worship the goddess. You must go sometime. It's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
Whole blog on it, actually. I'll let you know. But
Please.
so I, the fact that there was this one teacher in the program who had a connection to the goddess in India, it wasn't through dance, but it was, that drew me to the program. And I had an immediate connection with her, and so I joined that women's spiritual 2-year MA program, and out of that developed my thesis. And it was they used a methodology for that was attractive to me also called organic inquiry. So the approach to writing was very spiritual and intuitive. Not that it wasn't academic also, but its basis was more organic, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for my thesis, to address that, I interviewed my friends who were my age who had taken the same path, 5 women, and I learned so much from them by interviewing them because naturally you don't know everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it's women's stories and the trajectory, and there were so many common points for us. We all started in the 70s, and
Mm-hmm.
most of us, many of us, married men from India, whom naturally we met through. When you fall in love with Indian dance, you don't just fall in love with Odissi, you fall in love with India
India.
and all that it encompasses.
100%.
uh, an Indian man. And that's it's not separate. All the things are connected. It's all connected. And I think for many of us, I can't speak for everybody, but there were difficulties along that path, and heartbreak and love also, everything, all the emotions, right? All the 9 emotions.
All the nine emotions.
Yes, yes. Um, so my thesis, what else would you like to know about it?
So, I'd love to learn if it will be published in a book and if it will be available for the people to read it, because I think, in my experience, I think it's so important for people who are in the journey of classical Indian dance and those who are starting classical Indian dance to have insight of the people who were there before us, because there's so much that we can learn from the woman who were in India before us and who are carrying the art today. And because there's so much that we can learn from our gurus in India, but bringing it to the West is a whole other ball game. And so sometimes, and there's no book to teach us on like how to bring classical Indian art to your home country and make it your life. And so for me, as a seeker and someone who's very curious, I'm always eager to speak with women who who are living this art and learn from them. And so I think it's, what I've learned will be so valuable for everyone else to learn who are on the same path, because we can learn from you. So I think it would be, I mean, your book is so interesting, and I would love to know if it will be available for the public to have access to it.
Certainly hope so. I am in touch with two different publishers, but I'm not very, and they're interested. One is a local one, and one is an Indian publisher. Um, I have a lot of work to do on it because when I originally did the thesis, the format for this organic inquiry was ritual. So each interview I conducted, and I flew to each of my friends. They happened to be, most of them were on the East Coast, and spent several days with them for the interview process. But it actually took place within a container. So we had a format for, literally, we created a ritual for this interview. And one of my interviewees, we, except to eat, we didn't stop for 8 hours. It was this flow of consciousness when, you know, the ritual really did provide this beautiful medium and safe container for my interviewees to pour out their
Their
stories,
heart.
their hearts. So, as beautiful as that was, and that is in my thesis, I think it's going to have to be edited for the published version because honestly, we went through some really extremely difficult things. I mean,
Yes.
I almost died from malaria. There was a point, I didn't say this earlier, but there had been sorry,
Take your
um,
time.
that there was an epidemic of cerebral malaria in Baroda when I moved there.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I got malaria, my doctor, they were afraid it was cerebral malaria, and you can go like that with cerebral malaria.
Wow.
My doctor came to my side. He spent the whole night with me.
Wow.
I was ready to go. I was
Oh
just ready.
my God.
I was ready to let go because I was really sick, and he just, I remember him whispering in my ear, don't go. You have Tara. You need to be here. You need to stay here. And he pulled me back. Yeah, I would have just gone. It was easy to let go. At that point, it was easy to let go. When you're that sick, you just feel you have nothing left. You have,
Of course.
sorry.
No,
So
thank you so much for sharing the story. It's very profound.
I'll never forget that doctor. And afterwards, he gave me a crucifix because he knew I was Christian, and I just feel he saved my life.
He
He did.
did.
He did.
He did.
So, that story, of course, I can tell, and in a way, I'd like to tell all the stories, but some of it has to be edited.
I mean, I understand there are really, I think from all the interviews that I've had so far, I think a lot of us have experienced the same, in the classical Indian world. It's beautiful, but it's really harsh. Uh, there's uh, I will just point out so that our viewers can understand, sometimes words that are hard to, express verbally, but there is racism, there is sexism, there's harassment, there's disappointment, there's delusion, and it's not easy at all. I mean, I feel that maybe the classical scene in Chennai is more sophisticated, but in Orissa, it's very wild and tribal.
Yeah.
And people have no idea until they've spent like 2 months there or like 1 month. And it's really, I mean, if you're first and foremost, it's really good to speak with people before you go there so you can understand the ins and outs. But it's really good to go there prepared for anything that can happen. And most of all, with that mindset that you're there to dance. Because if you're not with that mindset, you can really,
Can go off.
you can go crazy. I've seen so many people go completely nuts while studying dance, and they just, a switch happens. Bah. And a lot of foreigners come there and are not cultured with the traditions, with the customs of India, and then their behavior gets interpreted wrongly. And so a lot of harassment has happens. So you have to really educate yourself before going to India, and especially studying the arts, and know to be completely devotional, but also know how to be have your boundaries and defend yourself so that they don't run over you.
Completely agree. I mean, well, two things, a little bit of an aside, but anything can happen. When I was in Orissa studying, um, it was about for 2 months, but I had gone out one evening after dark. I was about 2 blocks from the main road on a off a dirt road, um, studying at a small school there, and um, I went that night to the market to get a gumcha. You know, gumcha. Gumcha is a little cloth for my teacher Vishnu
Yes.
Tattva, Desi teacher. He said he wanted, what can I bring you back from Orissa? I asked, and he said, bring me back a gumcha. I went to the market. It was night. I caught an auto rickshaw. I got my gumcha. I came back, and he could have taken me in the 2 blocks, but I thought, oh well, I can walk the 2 blocks. Doesn't matter, just 2 blocks, right? So I got off the auto rickshaw. Famous last thoughts. I walked a block, and I suddenly, the earth literally fell out from under my feet. I stepped into it. Well, oh no, first there was a power cut. Power
Oh,
all the
no.
So it was completely dark. I stepped into an open manhole.
Oh my God.
Straight down like a cartoon, like and I screamed, and it was so strange. I could have killed myself or broken my leg or broken something. Um, as in India, if you scream, instead of people running away from you, 20 people will run towards you, right?
Yes.
So as soon as I was in, it seemed I was magically pulled out. And I was hurt, but not, I didn't know how badly, but
Oh my God. I've seen those holes and I've always dreaded them.
what happened is a scooter was coming towards me, but there were no lights on, so I stepped aside, and the aside was the open manhole. Of course, I couldn't see, and I didn't have my torch with me,
Yeah,
or
of
my
course.
so they put me on the back of a scooter, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to walk again, but fine, put me on the back of a scooter, that's fine, okay. And then they dropped me, the guy on a scooter who came by and helped. They dropped me at my house, and I somehow came up the steps in the morning, and I literally crawled to my bed, not knowing what happened to me. But in the morning, the teacher came, and rather than being compassionate, she was like, you didn't take your torch, you should not have gone out at night. she was she was
Yelling
angry.
at you. Yeah, typical.
I did recover, and I mean that's a whole another tale that I could tell about
Whole
how I
nother tale. Yeah.
got an X-ray in India from. um, anyway, nothing was broken,
Thank
and
God.
it ended up being a very cathartic time for me because I was lying in my bed for 10 days listening to birds, and I went. It was a really interesting time. So, I mean, there's both sides to these events. but anything can happen. That's my
Anything can happen. There is just no doubt about it. I've also had, I mean, in my very early years in India, um, I was young and naive, and I'm coming from my Portuguese. I mean, I come from a culture where we're very open and happy and jolly, and I mean, at least I was brought up that way. And so I was banged in the head. I was, tossed and turned so intensely in India. I had, and still today, there's not one year that I go to India that I don't have something really wild happening to me. And then I'm like, oh my God, India, you've done it again. And there's always, I mean, I've experienced having a catharsis, situation where I'm like 1 week where I'm just all I can do is just lay in bed.
right.
I've had, I mean, I think there hasn't been 1 year that I have not had that. I've always had like 1 week where I'm just processing, in silence or with a mantra, everything that's happening to me. So it's part of the journey.
And it's part of it's part of embracing it, and those experiences are deep,
Yeah.
difficult. They can be difficult, but they're also I embrace the intensity of it, I guess, in a certain way. I mean, um, so many amazing things happen.
Yes.
They happen in the same way here, honestly.
It's true. I always tell my friends, like joking, I'm doing a PhD on life in India. So
I've written my obituary in my mind several times. I've been on Indian buses. Okay, she died doing what she loved. She was okay.
Oh my God. So tell me, Barbara, do you still go to India
I
today, or like, is it part of your ritual to go there every year still?
well, I if I can be fortunate, it's every year. Last year, I was very fortunate. I got to go, and I was there for 2 months, and for a music festival in Chennai.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
oh yeah, it was fabulous. I had a fabulous trip last year.
Oh, thank God, you deserve it.
It was marvelous. And every year, I try to go a different place
Mhm.
because I love all of India. Now, I think it was the year before last. I went to visit this who had come here.
Sorry, could you just
Actually,
repeat where you went to go because the internet cut for a second?
I'm sorry. Yes, I went to a small village in
Okay.
Madhya Pradesh. It was a
Okay.
long train trip from Chennai overnight. I think it was 23 hours. Um, there were a group of singers of the songs of Kabir who
Hmm.
had come. Actually, my teacher from UC Berkeley, Linda Hess, who is a Kabir scholar, she had brought this troupe of uh, traditional village singers to California,
Oh,
and I had
wow.
helped present them because my job for many years, my real job, was in a bookstore, but not just any bookstore, a bookstore uh, where a small stage was built, and we had a coffee house and a stage. That was my stage. And I also helped present performances. So when this troupe of Kabir singers came, I helped present them with Linda Hess, and fell in love with them and wanted to just go on tour with them around the United States, up in the back of their van, but I couldn't. Um, that was probably 10 years previous. So finally, I went and made a pilgrimage to their village.
Oh.
It was the year before last. But last year I went. Yes, I had a wonderful. I go. My teacher, Katherine Kunhiraman, has a flat in Chennai, and her niece Yashoda, K.P. Yashoda, who's a postgraduate from Kalakshetra, she has her school there in Chennai.
Okay.
So I'm very fortunate to have a foothold there where I can stay when I go.
That's wonderful. It's so wonderful to have a family when you go to India. I'm so
There, yeah,
fortunate too to have family, little families everywhere I go and stay with the families and have a
exactly.
full immersive experience with India. So when I'm in India, I'm very Indian.
Oh
So
yes,
yeah, I'm super Indian. I only stay with my Indian friends, with their families. I'm always immersed with. I become one of them, and I'm fully immersed with them. And I feel that's the best way to really understand India is to have family there. Adopted families.
yes, I totally agree. So of
Yeah,
course this year I can't go, but uh maybe next year.
next year. I think we're all hoping to get there next year.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm very curious about your mother. I see your mother is so inspiring. I mean, she's 100 years old plus, and
102.
102, and she practices yoga. I mean, I think if you could just tell us like how she got into yoga and how that brings probably like life force to her, I think that could really inspire our public.
Sure. Um, yes, she's 102 and a half. Um, she was always very interested in physical exercise, and she wanted to be a rockette. Do you know who the Rockettes were?
They
The
jump
rock
out of things?
they're a famous dance troupe in New York with the line of dancers, all the women kicking
Oh, yeah.
in unison
Yes, I've seen that.
in like the 1940s or something.
Oh my
But
God, so cute.
dance, and she didn't become a rockette. Um, but she during the war she was in the Red Cross in London. She volunteered, and then she got married and had children. But she always loved to hike and loved to exercise and loved to walk. Walk. She walked a lot, and so even in her 90s, she was walking an hour a day or something like that.
Oh, wow.
We traveled back to Germany because my sister lives in Germany when she was 96 and she had a great trip. um, so she's always been very vital that way. I think the yoga did come through both myself and my sister were both yoga teachers. My sister in Berlin is a yoga teacher.
Oh,
Um, so the yoga influence came directly through us and she embraced it. And we have a wonderful teacher here now who's transitioned to Zoom. And so 3 times a week, my mother does her Zoom yoga. Also doing Qigong, and she loves Qigong.
oh, that's just so wonderful. How inspiring. I mean, the whole three of you are just so inspiring women, and I hope the world can get to know you all much better and your story because it's really inspirational.
Very sweet. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my daughter has taken, stepped on my shoulders and then taken wings and gone far with her dance.
She
Yeah.
really has. She's really her artistry is so unique and so beautiful, and her body language is it's something so outwardly, Tara, I feel. And um, it's really inspiring to feel this trinity of women who are all artists and yogis and dancers. I mean, you are also blessed to have each other, I must say.
And I'm blessed to have her home because of the pandemic, because she was in London and she had to leave. She finished her MA there, but then when the pandemic came, she just was she got out on one of the last flights. And, but she's been traveling for so many years. It's really nice that she can just for a little bit be in one place. And
Yes. And be with you. You can have her more time with you.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I'm experiencing the same thing with my mom because I spend most of the year in India and I come home just for like a month. And so now I have me, my mom, and my sister. We're having a lot of quality time together, and I realize it's really important to get to know each other, our habits, and our
Right.
dreams and our tastes and all these things. So I think in a way it's been really important for us to be together during this time.
Silver lining, yeah, of the pandemic. It's the silver lining.
It is
Yeah.
the silver lining, 100%. Now, the dance teaching online is a struggle for everyone, I feel, especially for teaching classical Indian dance. It's a challenge. I think everyone is experiencing it.
Yes, but we've stuck with it, and the hardest thing is this is the space that I teach in, and it doesn't go very far back. So either my head is cut off or my feet are cut off, and but we've continued the classes, and there's the kids are still learning, and they're sticking with it, and we will do it until it's safe to be in the studio again. So
Yeah.
we'll keep going.
Well, thank you. I think I don't really have more questions to ask you now. Barbara, I want to just thank you so much for your time and for sharing your journey with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, so
And please do keep us posted if you release a book on your thesis, because that would be such a great gift for all of us to
we
have
will.
access to these, amazing journeys of all these, pioneering women who traveled to India way before us. And so that knowledge is so valuable until today and forever. So, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. And I do pray for you and I wish you well. And inshallah, maybe we meet in India next year.
Next time. I certainly hope so.
I hope so too. And it's been such a beautiful journey doing these interviews, because I've been meeting such amazing women with such beautiful journeys, and um, it's been so heart fulfilling to finally connect with each other, and most importantly, just to feel that we're not alone. We're all in this together. And so my hope is for us to build stronger bonds with each other.
I think we're on the same path, and I,
Yeah.
I appreciate that so much. And yes, this is building the connections between
Yeah.
all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you too. Thank you so much. You have a
Namaste.
beautiful day.